are kind of a target because they're the people who get the least fresh fruit.
Right.
Yeah, right across.
I'm an advocate for that fruit.
Good morning and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Berry County Board of Commissioners for July 18th, 2023. Would you please stand for our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Limited public comment at this time. Any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes.
Well, good morning. Last week my lieutenant was on vacation, so we've got a report right now. So law enforcement logged 855 complaints in the month of June. 20 individuals were arrested. There were 73 accidents handled. 44 of those involved deer. 1 involved alcohol or drugs. 468 criminal histories were run for warrant and warrant requests. 70 sex offenders were processed and 200 pistols were processed. Incidents handled 2023 compared to 2018 is 855, 2018 815. Accidents handled 73 compared to 2018 there was 65. Car deer there's 44 compared to 33. Arrests 29 in 2018 we had 72. Alcohol and drug related arrests 5 and then 2018 there were 7. So that's
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Mary Chamberlain, president of Crystal Lake Improvement Association for many years. Our board and property owner members, thank you, have been working to get this dredging project underway since Russ Yarger was drain commissioner. We are requesting that the Board of Public Works manage this project. Our drain commissioner has many projects, which means he has little time to devote to this. Our sediment pond is designed to filter the water before it goes over the upper dam, down the channel, and into the lake. It is no longer functional as the pond is full of silt and muck and just yucky stuff, and has large islands on it. We are waiting for the dredging to be done. While we are waiting for the dredging to be done, these islands are getting larger. More silt is building up, and there's less filtering of the water before it goes over the dam. The water flows into the channel is now full of silt and muck. If this eventually causes the upper dam to fail, the water and all of the silt and muck in the pond will go out into the channel and into the lake. Depending on the strength of the lower dam, it very well could cause flooding to the lakefront homes and possibly to Fish Lake and even Orangeville. Several years ago, the Drain Commission had the top of an island removed. This did little to remedy the situation as it was not completely removed, and the necessary dredging of the entire pond was not done. Allowing the Board of Public Works to manage this project should move this project along, as they do not have this large backlog that the Drain Commission has, and should provide some relief to the Drain Commission. Please consider this request and grant us the relief we are requesting. Thank you for taking the time to consider this.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Good morning. My name is Bob Miller. Thank you for allowing us to speak on behalf of this project. I'm the newest Crystal Lake property owner. We purchased our property in January. Newest CLIA board member. I was elected in June. I hold the position of trustee, and the board voted for me to be the project lead for the dredging project. So our shared problem, I think Mary described it well. We have a pond, it's full of sediment, silt. We have a beautiful waterfall, no one can get to it. The channel is full of sediment. There's property owners on the channel that can no longer use their docks. They have to put boats in on basically the boat ramp, take them out. So basically, we have a weed problem twice per year. We treat the weeds. I think that's gonna get progressively worse over time. So basically, our request, we're here on behalf of the CLIA and as a concerned property owner. We would like to spend up to $30,000 for the drain commissioner to get the bids to see what this project's gonna cost. I know that this approval is the first step in a lengthy process. You have my personal commitment that I'm here every step of the way, that I'll make sure that we work through and get the necessary approvals once we get the bids. So we have the needed signatures to move forward with the approval of this request, and there are several other members that are here to talk on behalf of this project. So I want to thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Additional public comment? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Murphy. I'm married to Sean. Sean lived on the lake. He grew up on the lake. He would often tell me stories about when him and his friends would go on a rope swing and swing out into that sediment pond. Now, you can't hardly even get into the sediment pond. There's ducks and geese. They're walking in it rather than swimming in it. When Sean and I began dating in 2011, he used to take me out on his boat. His boat was parked in the inlet channel, and we was easily able to get in and out of that channel with his boat. Now, our neighbors that live on the channel, they're barely able to keep their boats in the channel, let alone getting them in and out to go into the bigger part of the lake. They're risking damaging their boats and their motors. Sean and I married in 2013. And then in 2017, we bought the lake property across the road from us. We have 2 small children, and we love living on the lake. In August of 2020, I got further involved in the association. I stepped in as treasurer. And then in 2021, I got voted in, and now I'm currently secretary treasurer. The mission and the purpose of the association is to maintain and manage the 2 lakes and the common lots owned by the association. Concerns for the pond have always been a topic at the annual meeting since we've joined and been neighbors. When the pond was dredged roughly in 2016 or 2017, it was done very poorly. The permit was only created to remove 600 cubic yards of the sediment, but sadly, only half of that was removed. Later in 2021, I believe the rest, so roughly, 300 more cubic yards were removed, but it was too little and it's too late. Since then, likely because of things like logging and road work done on Enzian, above our road on our lake, the pond is filling in. The sediment pond is now nearly full and overflowing into the dam. In February of 2022, Jim Dole came into our quarterly meeting and he listened to our concerns about our lake, and he guided us on what steps we needed to do. He told us that we needed to, grant him delegate of authority. So I took to the streets and I got the signatures of most of our neighbors, and he got delegate of authority. In September 2022, we held a special meeting to figure out which project that we wanted to vote on, and it was almost unanimous. Everyone believes that we need to do the pond and the inlet channel. Those are what's most dire. Not one member voted no dredging. Then Jim explained that the next step is that we have to get permits, engineering, soil testing, and bid specs. He said that this would cost no more than $30,000. So we gathered more signatures. Again, most of the signatures were gotten, and now we're just waiting for the commissioners board to vote yes.
Okay. Your 3 minutes has expired, but thank you. Additional public comment?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Joy Murphy. I'm Stephanie's mother-in-law. Sean is my son. We've lived on Crystal Lake for 44 years. I have never seen the sediment pond in the condition that it is now. It is so full that my fear is it's going to break, that the dam is going to break. It broke in 1998, and we spent probably $80,000 for its repair. My fear is that it's going to break again, and when it breaks, all that sediment goes down the channel, and then it's a huge, costly project to get all that sediment out. I mean, either way, we're taking the same amount out, whether if it breaks or not, but people who keep their boats down there will not be able to get their boats off of that sediment if it breaks and goes down the channel. I'd like to invite each and every one of you to come to and take a look. The pond is on the corner of Beaver and Corey. It sits behind a brick house. You can see it from Beaver. And it's so shallow, there's grass growing. It's just in a horrible disrepair. We're gonna lose our lake if something isn't done soon, and that would be a shame. Our property values would go down horribly if nobody has lake frontage anymore. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Gary White, Nashville, Castleton Township, Berry County, and resident of Michigan in the United States. A few things on your agenda today. One is the master plan. The master plan was approved with adjustments on it that the Planning Commission has not seen. I'm not sure that I would ever send a contract. I told them at the end of the meeting. There was quite a few citizens there. Went to Castleton Township and talked about the master plan and also about the members that are on the Planning Commission. You have 4 Delton area members of the Planning Commission. You have 3 from the Hastings area. Suggestion from Castleton Township was divide the Planning Commission seats up into quadrants or regions. Went to Maple Grove, and the first thing I heard right after the meeting, trustee came up and asked me, is that a seat available? I said, no, it's already taken. He said, let me know if another one comes up. Went to Village of Nashville village meeting, and Mike Kenyon, president, right in the meeting said, we have many people here that if they would have known, would have possibly taken that. It's the commissioner's responsibility to get this information out, not just say, well, we put an ad in the paper. It's on our website. You go to these meetings, and you need to promote the needs of the county at these meetings. As I said, right now, we're not a very diversified planning commission. Right now, the master plan for 2040, 17 year is going to be looked at today to pass. And the planning commission has not even looked at the final master plan itself. This right now should just be sent back to them, and then after all the, what do I want to say, the corrections have been made, then they should pass it to make sure that it is correct. Because they want to review it and then say, well, okay, yes it is, or no it isn't. After you folks pass it. Makes no sense. I told them that, and many people agreed at the thing. So this master plan needs to go back to planning, and then after they look at all the reviews, then do it. Your resolution, we passed the resolution, Berry County Republican Party Executive Committee unanimously. I talked about a second amendment, and 4 commissioners did vote to have county board do it. I guess this resolution that you have, our resolution was done by many, many people of residents. It actually came from another county that had residents, state of Michigan, And it took a couple months for us to get a resolution. I guess my question is, who authored this resolution? And are you going to look at having both resolutions passed? So that is incredibly important, if you ask me. So the other thing I did give a thing for the 2A rally that's going on tomorrow. Many people from Berry County are participating or doing it. There's some flyers over there. Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you. Additional public comment?
Larry Bass, Carlton Township. I'm going to parrot a little bit on what Gary just talked about. There was, back in March, the Republican Party, with 4 of the commissioners, voted unanimously on a resolution to make Berry County a Second Amendment sanctuary county. That's neither here nor there, but after March, April, May, June, now we're in July, I would hope we had done much better than the resolution that's before you folks today. As a matter of fact, my recommendation would be you table this today and have a more in-depth conversation and come back with something that's more palatable to a lot of us. Eaton County reacted almost immediately when the red flag law was passed in Michigan. They initially had a constitutional resolution, much like this one is. But as soon as the red flag law was passed, they immediately voted to make Berry County a Second Amendment refuge county. Refuge and sanctuary are synonymous. They mean the same thing. So rather than get tied up on semantics, I'd like to make that clear initially. They've also, like we did here, they contacted their sheriff and their prosecutor. They had no problem at all with the resolution that was passed, including reference to the Second Amendment, not just a generality. So once again, I could give you facts, I can give you data all over the state, on how many counties we have, how many of them are controlled by Republicans, how many of those counties are all Republican commissioners. And I would also recommend that if you haven't read the Republican National platform, you should probably read it. In that platform, it very clearly specifies adherence to the Second Amendment. It's out there in black and white. So once again, my recommendation, my hope is that you folks would take this resolution that's currently before you, and after the discussion, table it, move it on, and have a lengthy discussion, possibly including members of the community involved in that discussion. So thank you very much, and it's good to be back.
It's good to have you. Thank you, Larry. Additional public comment? Hearing none, we will move ahead with our agenda. Drain Commissioner Dahl.
Didn't kill enough trees? Didn't kill enough trees?
And before we dive into this,
Yep.
This has been before the board month and a half, 2 months ago, whatever
2
the case
months,
was.
all of 2 months.
We had a good discussion on this. I think the discussion kind of got in the weeds and went down a few rabbit holes and things that didn't really pertain to the agenda request, which is a resolution not to exceed $30,000 for the lake level project for Crystal Lake. And basically, what the Drain Commissioner is asking for today, and what you've heard from several Crystal Lake residents and board members, is that they would like us to approve authorization to spend up to $30,000 to do the research on what it's going to take to clean out the sediment pond, the channel, and make this lake functional again. This is not a final action as far as us approving $400,000 or $500,000 in expenditures, $200,000 in expenditures. This is only the start of the project, and as it proceeds, if it proceeds, I'm sure that they'll have a chance to have input as Crystal Lake residents to come back and see if they actually want to spend that money. So we got way off on a lot of questions on assessments and percentages and stuff like that. The other thing that I think is important to note is that last week, Commissioner Doster had a question on the Board of Public Works involvement with this process for Crystal Lake. Mr. Brown, Michael Brown, did send that over to our attorney for a review. I put a copy of that on your desk. And basically, the long answer short, it says the lake level court documents in Berry County Board clearly established that the original and subsequent projects undertaken to maintain the lake level were undertaken pursuant to Act 451 and its predecessor statute, Act 146 of 1961. The Crystal Lake project has not been and is not proposed to be undertaken pursuant to Act 185, such as the Board of Public Works has no legal role with respect to the proposed lake level maintenance project, and it would be inappropriate and confusing to refer this to Board of Public Works. So I wanted to put that out there because to answer your question, since Commissioner Doster brought it up last week, and it was mentioned in public comment, just to set the stage. So, Jim, go ahead, or Doug, go ahead, how you guys want to lead into that. So,
The packet, Mr. Doster had requested a little bit of information, so we went back through and did the history of it. In your packet, you'll find the original court order where the supervisors agreed to it. You'll find a roll from '84 that shows where it was assessed. At that time, the county was not at large. In '99, when Tom Doyle came forward, proposed a project, got the commissioners to sign off, he put a 12% benefit on the county. As Drain Commissioner Doug will attest that we have the right to do that as a public benefit. It takes in property values and all that good stuff. And when we redid our role in '19, we followed Tom Doyle's lead. He was Drain Commissioner for 10 years. I had no doubt that he had good justification for what he did. It was a comparable project that we undertook in, I think, 18 to do a small amount of sediment removal from the sediment basin, we were trying to get a lead on how much sediment's coming in. We took out about 350 yards. It filled in within 2.5 years. So we went back to the association board, and we had previously sent out a survey asking what people wanted done. Did they want the channel dredged? Did they want the sediment pond dredged? Did they want the lake dredge? And we got 13 on each one. They just didn't come into an agreement on any one project. So we went, and Mary had us come to their meeting, Chad Mancarelli, the engineer, and I, and explain it, and said, okay, what do you guys really want? And they said, when the dam collapsed in '98, a certain amount of sediment went downstream. They cleaned some out, but not enough. So they said, we'd like the sediment catch cleaned out. Realistically, it could be 12 feet deep. Right now, the dirt, you can walk across the water. The channel downstream has a lot of material that needs to be taken out. Chad give a rough guesstimate on what it would cost. We tried to get, okay, do you guys want just one or just the other? And it was unanimous, like Mary said. Everybody there said, we want both the channel and the sediment pond cleaned out. Okay, cool. That's what gets us here. We proposed up to $30,000 to get a permit, which shouldn't be a hard permit, but with DEQ, you never know what you're going to get. But I believe we do need the resolution to exceed the $10,000 to get us to the permit in a timely fashion. We could do a little bit each year for the next 4 or 5 years on getting the permit and be under the $10,000, but that doesn't seem like a good way to do it.
Can you give us a timeline on this? Because there was a question on timing on this. if we pass this today, how long before the process starts, and when could they expect to see some results as far as you giving them a final cost on the total project?
As soon as we get the resolution to exceed, we're gonna have our pre-application with DEQ Eagle. We'll get Kelsey down there, explain what we're looking at doing, and see what hoops that we're gonna have to jump through for her. And once we get through the pre-app meeting, we can submit our permit. We got most of the details, I believe, we got the bathymetric survey, the sediment testing done, all that good stuff already. So I would expect we could get our permit in within the next 2 months. How long it'll take DEQ is another question. We just did get one timed out on Jordan Lake. Spicer got it through in 4 months. We've got the shallow lake permit that's been setting for 2.5 years.
Okay.
As soon as we get once we get our DEQ permit and we know what they're gonna allow us to do or not do, then we can get our bids out relatively soon before we have our public hearing. So, the quicker we get on this, the better. So, we did have some trip-ups in the past that has slowed us down. We found out the drain office was never set as delegated authority, and you guys approved us as delegated authority last year. There was nobody, it said set the role, but it didn't say who was supposed to do any work, so. But,
Okay, so today is simply a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to approve the expenditures up to $30,000. That
Yep.
gets the ball rolling.
Yep.
There's no additional expenses, there's no county assessments. This is just to give the people of Crystal Lake an idea what this project is gonna cost. to give
correct,
them a
at this
quote.
point.
Okay,
And to clarify, if there is a assessment we will do a public hearing at the end of once we get if they decide not to do anything, at the end of the 30,000, we'll have a public hearing, and then we'll look at costs, percentages. At that point, the county, as always, is notified. They can come to the public hearing and say, nope, we shouldn't pay anything, or maybe they should say, we should pay more. So,
okay.
Yeah, just to be clear, either whether it goes or doesn't go, there will be a public hearing that the county will receive notice, all the landowners, et cetera.
But this is just for the evaluation of the project
Right now.
to give them a cost estimate. Okay, that's all we're passing today, nothing more. Okay, question from commissioners.
I have one
Commissioner
question.
Tennyson.
So when you do this permit application, it'll include the channel, everything?
correct.
Okay.
They're asking that we dredge 12 to 15,000 yards out of there.
Yes, we do it, we might as well do it right, right?
Exactly. It should have been, I'm not gonna say what should have been done in the past.
Commissioner Smelker, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. Additional questions?
You said if you plan to dredge how much?
12 to 15,000 yards is what the bathymetric survey is saying can be taken out to get back to original grade.
Just like, sorry, my voice is a little shot. A comment that I appreciated the legal opinion from Michael Myers on this. I thought it provided some clarity, and I appreciate the background information that you provided. So I don't have any further questions. I'd be willing to make the motion to pass this resolution, adopt it to go before the regular board at our next meeting.
Okay. Motion by Doster, support by Smelker to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 23-13, a resolution authorizing expenditures for the maintenance and repair of the lake level project for Crystal Lake not to exceed $30,000. Additional discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Doug. Next up, Barb Hurlis and Clark Yosen, co-file presentation. That's a big book. Good morning,
Many
Barb.
more. Good morning. Thank you for letting us come and speak with you. We've got a project that the Register of Deeds Office really needs to do. I invited Clark to explain it in detail to you. But first of all, the Register of Deeds is the keeper of all the land records in Berry County. There's two ways that they are kept. They are kept by grantor grantee. They're also kept by track index. From in the 1800s up to 2000 or 1970, there was the grantor, the grantee index, but there also was the track index, and that's what we need to deal with. The track index isn't used as much as it used to be, but when it is, it's because it's critical. They need to go back and solve a problem. They need to go back and find out where the boundary lines are. The track index is easy, it's quicker to use than the grantor grantee because you go right to the section town range that you want to look at. You can look down through it, where the grantor grantee, if a name is changed, you might not find it, what you're looking for days. An example is we had a couple come do genealogy from out of state. They spent all day on our computers downstairs, a whole day. I went back into the track index and found in 10 minutes what they wanted to know. So it's vital that we keep these records current, up to date in the computer. We want to digitalize them, get them in our system so that they can be searched by title companies, attorneys over the website. But the books are deteriorating, and they're deteriorating very fast. They're mold, the ink is fading, they're dirty, they're ripped apart. So in order to get these digitized, a lot of these books have to be taken apart. And if you're going to take them apart, you might as well do it right and restore the books, put them in binders that are fireproof. They are now not in a vault that are fireproof, and we need to do that per statute. We need to get these cleaned up. We need to get them digitally put into the system for people to search and to preserve and protect the history of Berry County. These books, when people look at them and review them, are $1 a minute per state statute. The commissioners set that, and that is the going rate throughout the state. For the last quite a few years, we have what they call the automation fund for the Register of Deeds office. $5 out of every recording fee goes into this fund, and what that fund is for technology, getting things on the internet, getting things kept secure and safe and preserved and protected. And right now, we've got about $275,000 in that fund, and you have to build up a large amount of money to do anything. It's now time to take care of these books. We've got all of our images into the computer from the beginning of time. We're indexed back into the 1800s with grantor grantee, but we need to get those land records in there and get it protected. And like I said, these books aren't used a lot, but they are our history of Berry County. In an example, in 2022, we had a track record of $7,934 of title companies that have used the track. This year alone, now that we're digitally on computer, it's been over 9,000. If we could get those records from the 1800 up to the 1970s, it'll bring in more revenue, and people will be very happy because they can just log in right from the internet. So what I did was I asked Clark to come and explain exactly what they could do to these books. What I'm asking for is the permission to sign a contract with CoFile to preserve these books. But in order to do that, they have to be transported out of the courthouse, I think you said to Texas?
Correct.
Where they do this, and it's all secured. And they actually take all these books apart, they refurnish all of them, and he can explain all the details of what they do. They put them back together, and it will preserve our history. So
How long will these books be out of Berry County?
Approximately 9 months to a year.
So when these are out of the county for 9 months to a year and people are looking for this information, what do we do?
they have to use the grantor grantee index book. It takes longer and it's free, where these are $1 a minute, but it needs to be done before these deteriorate to the point you can't even read them.
So it's not going to make finding information impossible for people searching for it. They just have to use a different source. Will there be someone in your office to guide people through that process?
Yes, I mean, people that come in and use the grantor grantee, it's very simple. We show them how. We have our computers that people use.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Clark Yost, I work for CoFile, actually just from Rockford, not too far from here.
Would you pull that microphone a little closer?
Sure. So, as Barb explained, we are looking at doing a preservation project on the tract books. And actually, would you be able to go back a couple slides to current overview? Perfect. So, current state, I brought a book from her office just to give you guys an example of what it looks like. And I'll pass this around. It's big, it's heavy. Be prepared to
It is one of the lighter books.
It is. So, yep, each one's about 600 pages. Well, I wanted to pass it around because as you look inside of it, take a peek, because these books are deteriorating. So there's 34 books in total of what we're looking at for this project, and they represent the 17 townships of Berry County, 2 books for each township. And so the older ones, because there's 2, so the first set go back to the 1830s of when they start. So the 1830s to about the 1850s of when they began. And then the next set starts around the 1900s. So the book you're looking at right now is almost 200 years old. So just think of that. What you're holding is the history of Berry County, now almost 200 years old, 190 years old. It was handwritten in with multiple different types of ink. And what you'll see is that ink is fading, it's bleeding, and what's essentially happening is because the book and the paper and everything within it is acidic, where it currently sits in the office is very humid. So it's not temperature controlled. There's a large window. If I'm not mistaken, there was a water break for a line that ran through there a few years ago. So the books themselves are considered permanent records by the state, and are supposed to be kept in good working order per state statute. Currently how they sit, they're not. So there's tape that's been added to it. They're not a bound book anymore. They're in a mechanical binder. Everything about this is making the book get worse and worse every day. So even if they were to just sit and not be used at all, they're going to continue to get worse just due to the current state of what they're in. So what we are proposing to do as an organization is based upon the American Institute of Conservation. So we do everything according to their statute. We have conservators of what you think going into a museum, finding an old painting in a back room, and then coming in to restore it. We're doing that to these books and to books across the country. So we take them, our main facility is in Dallas, Texas, where these books would go. And we would remove all of the tape. All of this is done by hand. We use a heated micro spatula to then remove it. We clean the pages themselves, so even as we sit here and touch the pages, there's oil on our hands. That oil rubs off onto the paper. It smears the ink over time, and the tape itself is covering some of the ink that was used to write in it by different registers through time, which essentially is removing that font. So if nothing is done, you're going to lose the history of Berry County. And since it is all townships that we're looking at, it represents the entirety of what Berry County is and every citizen within it. These are their property records. This is how Barb mentioned, very easy way to be able to go back and search where a property boundary may be. But not just the cleaning portion, we deacidify it to make sure that the process of deterioration stops, and then encapsulate it with the patented Mylar, mend any tears as well, and place it in what this would be. This one's much lighter. You guys can take a look at this, open it if you would like. It is a patented disaster safe binder. We created this as an organization in response to Hurricane Katrina. It is fire resistant and water resistant. We can make it in any size. Our bindery makes it themselves. It's actually self-extinguishing as well. It'll, resisting fire or water for up to 4 hours. But on top of all that, it creates some micro chamber for humidity. So while these books are in the room with a large window, and we all know Michigan temperature goes up and down. In May, we had 90-degree weather in the beginning, and then it went back down to the 60s at the end. So who really knows what we're dealing with in Michigan? But these books will Well, these binders will actually help regulate all of that. So on top of the preservation, we will digitize it. We will make sure they are searchable so that you can easily go in and find the record. And then per state statute, we will microfilm it as well so that there is a way to recover it in case something were to happen. Just make sure that there's a security backup. Next slide, please.
Is the microfiche going to be available to the public as well, or is that just for backup purposes?
That would just be for backup purposes.
Okay.
The digital records and the books themselves are what the public would use.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So we are a nationwide company, and we do work with counties all across the country. So listed are just a few references of counties you'll see in California, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts, of who we've worked with that are working towards preservation of their whole collection of records. We do this for any permanent record. So it might be vitals. It could be DD-214s for military records, court cases and probate, adoption records, or in this case, deed records and abstract records. So we're working with counties all over here in Michigan of who's worked on a project for their abstract books. Ionia County, just neighbor to here, Isabella, Oceana, Tuscola, and more of who we've done preservation work for here across the state of Michigan. So I could go on and on about the references, but I think that gives a very good idea of who we've worked with. Next slide, please. So I talked about what we would do. How we do it is actually have a truck come up. It is a co-file truck. We don't third-party anything. So from start to finish, everything is done through co-file in our laboratory in Dallas, Texas. This lab is secure. It's actually the old Kodak facility where the JFK microfilm was taken way back. It has 3 vaults to it, so anytime a book is not being worked on, it is stored in one of our 3 vaults. Beyond just work that we are processing at the time, there is storage there as well. I know Wayne County has their track books there of who we've worked with for the Register of Deeds, and we just store them permanently in our vault in a secure area. So the work is taken, worked on by hand. Anything that is still bound, we unbind by hand. We don't take a guillotine cutter and chop anything off. It is, everything is unsewn by hand. So very carefully done. Again, it goes back to the whole American Institute of Conservation and their priorities around this to make sure that it's done properly. Next slide, please. And this is all just to make sure that when they come back, they are in pristine condition. And we estimate that once encapsulated, properly treated, and put into a binder like this, that the records could last for another 400 to 500 years. So until the state changes something along with their statutes to say that the books are no longer needed, which we don't anticipate ever happening, because paper is the most secure source. It can't be changed. Digital can go in and be altered, cropped, taken a picture of, and that's why there's so many different layers of security around digital to try to help with that. But we don't have anything digital that at this time is 200 years old. It didn't exist back then. So that's why paper is the most secure form. Next slide, please. So a little more about co-file. We've been around over 100 years. We are a combination of multiple different conservation companies across the United States. From that, we've created labs in Vermont, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Nevada, and California. So that helps with us being able to manage work across the country. We have hundreds of staff that are all trained to be able to handle these documents with the utmost care to make sure that nothing is damaged while we are working on them or processing them. And when it comes to mending, we've done our research and found a special tissue which, when adhered to the document, can still be seen through, doesn't damage the text at all, doesn't damage the paper, is non-acidic, but will mend the page in a way much better than tape to then let it be held together as a whole and make sure the document doesn't rip at all anymore throughout. Next slide, please. So as we talk about a project of this size, 34 books to go through preservation, all the cleaning. Once that happens, we go through the imaging process the scanning, we want to make sure that you receive the best image. So we wouldn't go ahead and just scan things that have tape all through it or staples or pages on the front of them. We will remove all of that before we provide you with the scan because these are permanent. And we want to make sure that what's done once is done correctly so it doesn't have to be done again. And so all of that takes time, especially the imaging piece, because once we do image it, you can see looking through with some of the text fading or even bleeding through, we can remove some of that from the digital image or even enhance it. And that's what our graphic designers take a look at through each and every image. So every image is spot checked. So to think of that, 600 pages, 34 books. Somebody is looking at each and every one of those to make sure that you're getting the most pristine image possible. So very time-consuming process. After we do that, it goes to the microfilm, and as that is happening, we would return the books. So altogether, we would anticipate the 9 months to a year to actually have this project take place. Next slide, please. Thank you. So overall, our mission is to help Berry County. So it's preserving the past, protecting the present, and working towards the future of a goal together of how Barb mentioned you as a county can receive more funding through a simple project like this to be able to help generate revenue going forward.
Awesome. Questions from commissioners?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Well, I was looking at the different prices there would be for the different townships and such. I didn't catch the total of what this project would cost, but it would come from that fund.
Yes, and we do have a total, and I said not to exceed 200,000, just to put a cap on it. But we do have, and I thought you had the contract, but it's 197,000 and something.
197, 249.70,
Yep,
not to exceed 200,000.
yep.
Since she has that money, does this require our approval, or is this just informative for us?
Michael?
It does require your approval.
Plus, it does require your approval to remove those books from the courthouse. That has to be approved.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Getty?
Are there other companies that perform this service, and did you take it out for bids or quote?
Because these are patented products and process, there's not other companies that can provide this.
It's a good niche.
I will say that the last register, when she found out that they weren't preserved, microfilmed, get a company come in and take pictures of the images. And we didn't proof them at that time, we didn't have enough staff. The pictures that we have are not usable, they did not do a good job, and it was not done properly. We didn't know it at the time, but we need to have them done properly to follow the statutes of the state, to preserve and protect.
Commissioner Smelker?
Excuse me. You said there was approximately 9,000 people that got in and looked at these last year?
The revenue, once we went on to the Fiddler system, we have the track index that title companies and people can get an account, they can go in, and we had over, this year alone, $9,000 worth of funds that we have brought in, only because we charge $1 a minute, and it shows that the title companies, they would prefer, I think, to go in and look at that track index, do it online. But yeah, I think more and more people would use it, even people that do genealogy. Instead of driving from New York and spending a few days here, they'll go on and spend $1 a minute and find the genealogy that they want to in just a matter of minutes.
Okay. Commissioner Tunison? Oops, I'm sorry, were you done, John?
I was done.
Okay.
Mark, does this cover all the records from how far back? I mean,
Is it 1830?
I believe 1834 is when the first books were started.
so it goes back that far.
And this is just the township, village, and city books. It's not all of the books that are there. I had a price done that all the books to clean up. There's all kinds of other books, and that was close to, what, 400,000?
Correct.
So we just took the primary ones that we really need done, the townships.
That was my question, how far we're going.
So it was like 1830s up to 1970s.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Smelker.
As being the Register of Deeds, Barb, you figure this is priority one on what needs to be done?
Absolutely, because Berry County, we've always been very active in up-to-date technology. We're more advanced than a lot of places. We've been blessed with the money to do that through the automation fund. This is our next project. We have all of our images in the system except for a few mortgages, which I think by the end of this month, they'll all be in. So all of our images are in the computer. It's just indexing them, but this is the next project. This is to protect those books, protect the history, get that track index into where people can see it over the internet.
Thank you.
Okay. Barb, approximately how much money comes into the automation fund every year to Berry County?
We do about 13,000 documents, and it's $5 a document. So it's
Okay.
about, it takes many years to build up that money to do any project.
Okay. I know we've approved some other technology requests in the past. Are you concerned about taking, almost all of that balance out of the automation fund?
No, we are so up to date on all of our equipment, e-recordings, imaging. This is the next step in the project of getting everything digitized and preserved.
To add on to that answer, our billing terms would be 25% upfront when we pick up the records, and then 3 other equal 25% payments as we progress through the project, with the last one being when we return the books and the microfilm. So with the project taking almost a year, the fund would be rebalancing itself and replenishing itself as payments are being made.
And I think it's very important to realize this automation fund could go away tomorrow if the right legislative bill took effect. There was a sunset period that was extended, and I know that the talk was whatever's in those funds, if the county does not use them, could possibly go back to the state to spread out through the other counties that need that money for e-recordings and stuff. So I say it's time to use it before we lose it.
Okay. And just one more question for clarification. You said there's another way to search for all these documents. So we're taking these books out of the county, but yet we still have access to the information.
Correct. That's the grantor grantee index. That's by name.
Okay, so if we still have, if that information is still available, is it imperative that we do this versus buying a fireproof safe and locking these up someplace where they're out of harm's way and protected for future to preserve our history versus spending $200,000?
I would like to see a microfilm to put into the computer system without taking all the books apart, but these books are deteriorating. Give us 5-10 years, you're not going to be able to read them. So we need to protect them. Even if you put them in a vault somewhere, if they've got mold in them, they're going to be deteriorating.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Doster?
The case that you have there, it's a fireproof case, right?
Correct.
So you would no longer actually need a fireproof vault then?
Well, fire resistant.
Okay.
So self-extinguishing and fire resistant for 4 hours. So if things are completely engulfed in flames for a whole entire day, like the California wildfires, if you throw the book in those, or not California, but Canada fires, then it would eventually burn up, just due to the nature of what it is. But 4 hours is really the most of what we could build this with, which is a pretty good amount of time.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a guarantee on that?
Let me check. I have to get with Marky.
I'd like to see that contract, so. Okay.
I know we have done testing. They've shown us, really just throwing it into a metal trash can and setting on fire at one of our organizational meetings to let us see, like, here you go, and then pulled it out a few minutes after, and sure enough, everything within it was still protected.
Okay. The question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to remove track books from the Register of Deeds office to be refurbished by CoFile.
So moved. Doster?
Support, Calton.
Motion by Doster, support by Calton, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to remove the track books from the Register of Deeds office to be refurbished by CoFile. Additional discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need a break or are we good to go? Board will be at recess for 5 to 7 minutes.
How's Bruce?
Good, Dave. How's Dave?
As good as Dave can be. Nothing crazy going on in Delton down there? The VFW?
Oh, I had some major plumbing problems yesterday and air conditioning, but other than that.
It wasn't hot yesterday, but you still need to use the bathroom, so you know.
Yeah. Hey, Jim.
How are you today? Well, this is the official bound job. No, it's the official job. Oh, for today.
This is
All right.
two map corrections. So we can have that.
Reeling us back in.
Oh, would they want it, you'll have to. Is it listed on?
Yeah,
there?
I put it on there, yeah. It's the last one.
Next on our agenda, Jim McManus, acceptance of final master plan. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. So I have, Rebecca Harvey is with
Rebecca
me
Harvey,
this morning.
okay.
I think she
Here
is
we
our
go.
lead consultant, and we're very appreciative of her work. Get some details here in just a second. I have distributed a bound copy of the most recent draft of the plan with the corrections that were made at the public hearing that we held back in June. So it's as current.
These corrections are in here?
Nope. So that's so. Once I received the final draft, I went through it page by page and found a few additional typographical errors and corrections that had not been included yet, even though we talked about them at the Planning Commission already. So that list of 15 corrections will be implemented here in the next day or two, and then we will resend to you a final draft for next week with everything put into it. So it's, and even next week, if you have a question as you're reviewing it over the next week and we get to the final meeting and there's something else you want to see adjusted, we have time. We're not, until you actually say this is done, it's still a draft, right? So.
Okay.
This is, we're getting really close. This is as, final as we come, so.
All right, and with these changes or updates to the master plan, have these all been sent to the planning commission members, board members?
I just did these, so they have, the last page has not, but they will get them today, because I literally just typed it this morning.
Okay.
So, because I was working on it up to yesterday night. She has her copy, we'll pass it out to them so they know they're there. When you have typographical adjustments, Ithaca to Ithaca or something along those lines, that can be done administratively. That doesn't require a formal review or anything like that. So we're allowed to make those types of corrections kind of
Okay.
in-house.
But all the changes that were talked about at the planning commission public
Have all been
hearing,
put in.
all of the things that have been talked about have put in there. The planning commission board members have had a chance to review those.
We sent copies of the electronic version of the most up-to-date draft to the Planning Commission this past week. They've had a chance to review it. They'll have up till next week to make any comments if they wish to. We haven't heard from any of them, so like I said, I think everything is in the way that they wished.
And if there are any comments, changes, or corrections between now and next Tuesday's meeting, you can bring those to our attention or list those out for us from
We
planning
could, and
commissioners.
if you have any comments or questions as we go through this today, we certainly can make adjustments as necessary.
Okay, awesome.
So just wanted to summarize for you a little bit where we stood. Back in March, I came to you and asked permission to distribute the plan, the draft plan, to all the neighboring jurisdictions so we could start the public process. We did that, and we received significant comments from the Village of Middleville, the City of Hastings, Pierce Cedar Creek Institute, and Johnstown Township. Those comments were sent to McKenna, and they were put into place into the draft plan prior to the public hearing. So at the public hearing, the Planning Commission had an up-to-date correction with all those comments from the different jurisdictions. In June, we held the public hearing with the Planning Commission. There were 30 to 40 people there, several comments. Most of those comments were really in two main areas. One of those regarding blue zones, one of those regarding solar array capacities and solar power alternative energy. The comments and the amendments that the Planning Commission suggested after the public hearing are now included in this current draft of the plan. So that's all been implemented in. As I mentioned, we have the corrections page, and we'll have all that ready for you here in short order. Within the plan itself, hopefully you've had a chance to review it now. We've been to you a couple times.
Great bedtime reading.
Yeah, it's excellent. 200 pages of light reading. So they did a great job with the graphics. The demographics and economic profile is extremely well done. Generally, county plans at our size don't have that level of detail. We paid a little bit extra for that economic and commercial evaluation, and I think that really adds a lot to what the plan has. The action plan and the future land use, were designed to work with our existing zoning classifications, so there'll be an easy transition from this plan, and then when we do the update to the zoning ordinance, we'll be able to use the same classifications. The zoning plan that is included in there is based on our current zoning classifications. We believe that the way the land use plan is designed is simple, it is flexible, and Rebecca will get into a little bit more detail about how that flexibility is going to be advantageous for us.
It is actually a feature of the plan that I think is worth highlighting in that it.
Rebecca, would you move the microphone over
I'm
towards you?
sorry.
No, thank you.
How's that?
We
Better?
stream this, so it's easy for people online to hear it as well. So.
Understood. So it is a feature of the plan that I think is worth highlighting in that we use an approach that will make it easy for the county to work with the plan without having to go in and make the amendments that by statute are quite, there's a lengthy time involved. And by using a framework approach, there are 3 primary categories. And so you can move around within your classifications within each category without going through the amendment process, which gives the Planning Commission and the Commission a lot more flexibility to make adjustments within your communities as it relates to master plan classifications without triggering that classification process, or I'm sorry, noticing process. In fact, we are so keen on this that we really like how this is working for the county, and our plan is to kind of use this as a guideline for developing plans for other communities.
Okay.
So, and one of the big advantages is that even in those areas that we do not have direct zoning jurisdiction over, the planning classifications apply to all the different areas. And so, you know, whether you're in the Village of Middleville or the City of Hastings, we still have the same classification. So, you know, if a project or a request comes from those jurisdictions that requires county approval, you could still use the plan as a capital improvement plan or something that, so you know it meets the guidelines for the county. And in the future, we've had the Village of Woodland that has come back. The Village of Nashville is still in that discussion phase. We think that's going to happen. If they were to come back under county jurisdiction, it's already set. The table is set for them to come back in. We don't have to do a massive public hearing to amend the plans for those other jurisdictions. So
Okay.
we believe this is going to be a very easy document to work with for the next 15 to 20 years. Within that, as well as some of the comments that came out of the public hearing and the comments, gravel pits, alternative energy, there are segments within the plan that mention those and discuss them, give you capacities, goal objectives, acreages for identifying and determining how much we might need as a county. That's all included within the document. There's plenty of maps to show those areas and to represent where we believe some of these activities are going to take place. And then, you know, once, you know, as a master plan, you know, this is a guiding document. It's not the law. So once you approve this, we will, I've asked for next year to start working on updating the zoning ordinance. We have a lot of corrections that will need to go into the zoning ordinance. And then we've put that into the proposed budget for this year. And if all that were to go through, if this plan were to go through, though, I will have our attorneys start looking at the gravel pit and solar ordinances immediately. Those are high priorities that we need to get corrected as soon as possible. We do have one final piece of information before we get to the question stage.
Very nice.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah, McKenna was so thrilled with the way this plan came through is that they submitted this plan to be considered for a state recognition for planning excellence, and we were lucky enough to receive that. So this fall in October, we'll be going up to Traverse City to receive our award, to make a presentation to the state on how this process happened, and you'll be getting a nice plaque that we'll be able to display here at the county. Would you like to go into more detail? with
I
that?
was telling Jim, thank you. You gave me the look. I was telling Jim, so I've been a member of MAP, I think, ever since I've been a professional planner, and I've served on the board for 8 years, was the president for 1 year, and so I'm familiar with how the awards are reviewed and considered and granted, and they do so by an out-of-state panel. They put together a panel of professional planners from across the country to review nominations. And so this is totally not nothing. This is a big deal for you to get this. And we're very thrilled with that. And I don't know if you were going to bring it up, but we've also been asked to do a session on this at the conference. So Jim will join myself and another colleague at McKenna to actually hold a session on this particular plan, the things that we were talking about that kind of stand out in this plan. And it's also a focus on county planning. And I think that's one of the components that's getting some attention at the state level, is because not all counties, this is very unusual for a county to be at this level in their planning and zoning. And so Berry County is going to get some recognition there for that.
Very good. It's great to know. And Jim, we appreciate your work. And Rebecca, we appreciate your guidance on this as well. So thank you.
I got one question.
Yes, sir. Are you ready for questions?
We're ready when you are.
Okay.
How many more of these plans you gonna do, Jim?
Well, I'll just say it's always good to go out on top.
Additional questions from commissioners? Commissioner Getty?
There's a link that I don't think is working and wasn't included on it's on page 107. So I think, and you can do a hot link maybe to the county's 5-year rec plan, but embed the web address, just to make it really clear where you're sending folks to the 5-year rec plan and then to the Trails Master Plan. Both are, I just looked them up on the phone, both of them are on the county server, so it should be an easy hot link, because a lot of people will access this plan electronically.
Definitely. Thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Colton?
So I see, just things that in the county are very dynamic. I was just looking at your picture of who's got county zoning on page 13, and I know Nashville's just voted to go over. So how do these things get updated with dynamic change during the course of this plan?
Sure. So with the plan, there's kind of the built-in statutory requirements that we have to do formal reviews every 5 years. We can always do a review every year. So if this were to come to fruition, we'll do a fast amendment next year, and any other changes that need to be made, and do a plan amendment to include the village within the county zoning framework. So it's required to do, and we'll just make sure it happens.
Commissioner Doster?
This is kind of a specific question.
Sure.
Is P&Z working on an ordinance regarding minimal levels of elevation for building structures currently?
We haven't started those as of yet. Again, we're going to rewrite the zoning ordinance and go through it, and then those are some considerations that will be part of the new zoning ordinance.
Okay, and is there anything in the master plan then that reflects that or supports that, or?
Well, we have the recreational lake district is kind of defined. I don't think we get into specifically looking at minimum sizes within the plan. That's more of a zoning consideration, but it does define how to do, conservation around the lakes and proper development around the lakes and what's appropriate. So,
Yeah, I wasn't referencing minimal sizes, but the elevation of the, so that homes are not affected by rising lake levels.
Sure, yeah, so their floodplains are discussed within the ordinance, so water in general, so it's all there, the framework is there, the specifics really become part of zoning.
Okay. Well, Prairieville's kind of working on the same thing, and Rebecca is our consultant as well, so that's of great interest in our corner of the county, so.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Commissioner Tennyson?
When you made reference, Jim, to solar being a priority, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, we know that we have active companies that have bought property that we know are going to be approaching the county to put in a solar, commercial utility level solar array. And you know, I think they're public enough, but I mean, you know, Consumers has been here. We've had other companies they'll call, so it's not just them, and it's not just in one community. We don't have an ordinance right now that is specific enough for anybody to come in to make an application. The considerations are too subjective. We would like to create an ordinance that has very specific guidelines for the determination of whether a solar array should be placed in a specific location, and if it is, what kinds of protections can we put in for neighboring properties. We don't have that. We want to write that immediately.
I think that should be a priority.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So now that it's discussed in the plan, it's something we can take advantage of.
Commissioner Campbell?
Thank you, Dave. Hi, Jim.
Hey.
I like that trip to Washington we took a long time ago. Obviously, the solar panels are talk of a lot of the townships right now and everything. And the concern I keep hearing in my townships, I know in the plan here, there's X amount of acres that would be kind of a capacity limited amount of maybe 30,000, something like that. Their concern is that would there be an equal division of that so that 30,000 acres of it didn't come out of one specific area? In other words, would it be in your decision-making for granting those, which they are going to be here regardless somewhere, would it be divided location-wise in your granting of those acreages that you've set aside that possibly could go that way?
Well, I think that the market is going to dictate that a little bit. We've had calls from utility companies that want to place or are interested in looking at least 4 different townships within our jurisdiction already. So it's going to happen on its own. Within the plan, it discusses, though, that there are some guidelines like proximity to the utility itself, so we don't have an overabundance of transmission lines. You know, the size of the properties we need to be important. You know, so it's, and then there's some locations that the plan defines where it should not be. That, you know, that there's other considerations that have higher priorities than maybe the industrial level solar array. So when we anticipate that a request will require a special use permit, and then we're gonna, when we draft the ordinance, we will put those guidelines in. I won't say it's gonna be equitable to the acre, but it will be distributed, I think, across the county so that no single jurisdiction will have all the you know, solar panels in one area.
Right. They're concerned that somehow this is going to affect their tax base coming into their communities, because the solar fields will probably have relief from the state or somebody, so they don't become liable for that tax money. They're afraid they're going to lose some tax income, Jim.
Yeah, I can't answer that yet. I don't, you know, but we'll get into the zoning, and that'll be a very public process. And once again, those kinds of ordinances will be presented to you for approval, so we'll have a lot of time to discuss that.
Other than that, the book's beautiful.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot about our county.
Oh, great.
It's really good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a comment on solar. I know Marshall's having this huge discussion on with the solar panels, but there it seems like, because one of my patients is a farmer down there, is they're concerned about the loss of farmland, you know, to these solar fields. And I don't know, perhaps this is a question for Consumers Energy. If ever they were, I mean, is it reversible at one point in time when solar panels expire, or maybe needs change, maybe there's different technology, to bring these fields back to agriculture?
Yeah, well, I think that when we do the ordinance, hopefully we'll set up the kind of the reclamation idea that, when technology changes or something happens, that there will be a requirement to revert it back to its original state. We've also requested that, at least the plan discusses that within those solar fields that you still retain some level of, some natural, pollination area or something that so there's a function to it. It's not just lined completely with, wall-to-wall things. Yeah, and one of the considerations within the special use, the plan parameters is that farmland is a high priority in this county, and that needs to be weighed so that, if a request is being made, what is the level of or quality of the land that's underneath it, and should that be retained for other purposes? And so that's all going to have to be kind of described a little bit when we do the ordinance.
Thank you.
Commissioner Getty.
I just want to congratulate them. Again, this is a big honor, and it's, I've been to these conferences for many years, and it's going to really shed a bright light on Berry County in a very positive way. And so I appreciate all the work that the Planning Commission did, the planner, and our consultant, because it's good to be put on the map in this way.
Yeah, we're thrilled, and over the years, I think that we've tried, the county and to be a little proactive, to try to come up with ideas that maybe are in front of the state, not just with planning and zoning, but I know that Dave's work in GIS has been, talked about over the years and recognized, and, some of the other departments and just the way that Barb is doing some of these updates to the books. I mean, we're trying to set precedent for the state, and we've done that in the past. I hope this does it in the future.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments?
So next week, one of the things that we'll be giving to you as well is we have to do a resolution of adoption. So as long as everybody's pretty happy with what you've seen so far, we'll prepare that for next week and have that for you to sign.
Okay.
So this doesn't need to go back to the planning commission first, Mr. Chair?
Does not need to go back to the planning commission first. As a matter of fact, according to my conversation with Jim, it didn't actually need to come to us at all. We just request that it does. So we have a review of it, but.
Yep.
And Jim had mentioned that the planning commissioners have access to all this information. They're going to review it before we see it again next Tuesday. So if there are any changes, questions, or updates, or need to delay it, that'll be.
Right, and we meet Monday, so as a planning commission, so if there's anything that comes up, I'll bring it up to you on Tuesday.
Perfect, thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to accept the proposed master plan and authorize the planning department to complete any and all necessary requirements to complete the master plan.
So moved.
Support, Doster. Motion by Getty, support by Doster, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to accept the proposed master plan and authorize the planning department to complete any and all necessary requirements to complete the master plan process. Additional discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Jim. Michael Brown.
Congratulations.
Appointment of the MERS annual meeting to get delegates. It's that time of the year again.
It is. It is. It seems to go quickly, doesn't it? So yes, this is a request to appoint Amber McQueen was elected as the employee delegate and Barbara Rhodes as the employee alternate to attend the conference. And then the board needs to designate a officer delegate and officer alternate. I go to the meeting as a MERS board member, so that leaves the ability for a board member or a department head level position. It could be a board member, elected official, or a department head level position to be the officer delegate and officer alternate.
Okay. I've attended this, actually, I'd attended it in Detroit last time it was in Detroit, and if you haven't had an opportunity to attend one of these, they're very well run. It's a very nice hotel, and they feed you. We took a riverboat cruise down the river and had dinner, and it was a very nice time. It was well put on and well presented, so if you haven't had a chance to attend a MERS convention, I would encourage you to take an opportunity, especially since it is paid for. So, do we have volunteers?
I will just share that it is in Detroit this year, again. So if
September 27th through 29th.
29th, it will be at the Renaissance Center. It's the last year. We've actually only done it at MERS twice now. This will be the last time it's at the Ren Cen. It does not get a lot of, it does not bolster attendance when it's in Detroit, and it's become expensive. Post-COVID, the prices dramatically went up. We were locked in, so we will go there, but it is a nice venue. It's a nice, I concur with Chairman Jackson that it's a very well-run conference. It's a highly educational conference. Delves into aspects of the pension plan and our retirement plan. So if you have any interest, I encourage you to go see what it's about.
Volunteers? Not to draw a name out of a hat.
Not available.
Not available? Bob?
Yeah, I'll go.
You'll go? Okay.
Good.
You will enjoy it. Do we have a?
Thank you.
Do we have
Can you take your wife?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take your wife. She'll appreciate it, so you know. Bruce, would you like to be the delegate, just in case something happens to?
My father-in-law's got a 90th birthday party that
Okay.
weekend,
Okay.
I'll be the alternate.
Okay. Thank you,
It's
Mike.
only if Bob succumbs or.
Yeah, I was gonna say, something serious, like falling off a bike. We should mention that, Commissioner Hatfield.
You're a DC, not an ME, right?
The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to appoint Bob Tunison as the officer delegate and Mike Colton as the officer alternate to attend the 2023 Municipal Employees Retirement System's annual meeting and to approve paying the expenses for the officer delegate and an employee delegate to attend the September 27th through 29th, 2023 at the Renaissance Center in Detroit, Michigan. Is there a motion? Is there support?
Support.
Who wants to make the motion? Motion by Smelker, support by Getty, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to appoint Bob Tunison as the officer delegate and Mike Colton as the officer alternate to attend the 2023 Municipal Employee Retirement System Annual Meeting and to approve paying the expenses for the officer delegate and employee delegate to attend the September 27th through 29th, 2023 at the Renaissance Center in Detroit, Michigan. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Next up, resolution authorizing membership in the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool.
Yes, this is a request to approve Resolution 23-17, which is authorizes or approves the county participating with what's called the Western Michigan Health Insurance Pool, generally referred to as the pool now. It began as a Western Michigan Health Insurance Pool and has branched out into a statewide pool. A little bit of background for those that have been on the board for some time. We have worked with OVD, Oliver Van Dyke Insurance, Bruce Waldecker, for many years, and have had a great continuing relationship with Bruce. Served us well. We have a healthcare cost containment committee, which is comprised of members or a member of each of the bargaining groups, and then Luella and I and Stephanie Lehman serve on that from the kind of administrative capacity. The role of the Health Care Cost Containment Committee is to determine the plans that we will have, health insurance plans that will be provided or offered to employees every year. We put that in place around the time that healthcare caps came into place. State of Michigan adopted legislation that said the county can only contribute a certain amount based on a single subscriber, a two-person, or a family plan. Any cost associated with the health insurance plan, beyond that, the employee has to pick up. So we, our healthcare plan costs exceed that cap amount annually, and therefore it's imperative in that we allow employees to have that determination on the plans, and a little look into the lens of what they would do. They would meet every year with Bruce Waldecker and take a look at what the new rates are and say, okay, we're willing to accept that rate increase, or it's too much, in which case, like anything insurance, you have to give something up. So then would decide, how do the plans get modified for all of our 100, and we have about 140 contracts, 140 employees that take the insurance. And then we implement that. We've seen over the years significant increases. I think last year was around 16%, if I remember. And we went through that process, and we have, it seems like every year, gone through a process of doing one of two things. Because we purchase a fully insured product, and I think that's a little important for context, we purchase a fully insured product. There's really two options out there: Blue Cross Blue Shield or Priority Health. There are other networks that exist: McLaren out of the Lansing area, Sparrow, the Borges kind of network. Trying to think what else. There are some large national Aetna networks. But really where we're located, the McLaren would serve somebody that doctors and hospitals up in the Lansing area well, but anybody that's in the south end is going to come up short. So Priority and Blue Cross fit that, our demographic and our location well. So we've worked through switching carriers, going from Blue Cross to Priority, and changing plan design. At the end of the day, because of our size, we're over 100 lives, but not by much, right? At 140, we're experience rated. So our rates are based completely on our experience. Our 140 folks, and are driven by that. We began, I don't know if it's been a year now, but to look at alternate options. We said, well, it's time. We've got to look out there and see what else there is. Really, carriers aren't an option. Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and Priority still remain the option. So we looked at, and brokers as well really aren't the option, because unlike the auto or life or home insurance business where your broker might have access to 3 or 4 carrier brands, you go down the street or your neighbor says, well, I got a really good deal, and they work with a different broker who works with a different, so State Farm, for example, as opposed to Progressive. In the health insurance business, all the brokers have access to all the lines of business. So but we did look out at some brokers and talk to them. The other alternative that exists out there is going self-insured, which means that instead of buying a fully insured product like you would with your home or auto, you just purchase a fully insured. We would purchase the network, if you may, through Blue Cross Blue Shield or Priority. And then we go out on the third-party market and purchase reinsurance. So we would be on the hook, for example, for the first maybe $50,000 or $100,000 of a claim, and then reinsurance kicks in after that. So a little bit similar in your personal dealing with health insurance about taking on really high deductible, saying, you know what, I'm going to take a chance and save money by going with a $6,000 or a $10,000 or a $12,000 deductible. And then what you would, the difference is you'd do that, and then you'd take some of that savings and go out to another market and buy reinsurance to cover that. There's some complexity to it. There is also a lot of volatility and variability with it. There's some savings that can be had, and we talked to a couple of key brokers. 44 North is one of them. You may come across them when you go to your MAC legislative or MAC annual conferences. 44 North. The other is Advantage Benefits out of Grand Rapids. Both of them, I'm going to say, specialize in the self-insurance, self-funded field. They have a little bit different twist to it on how they do it. 44 North has what's called an HRA, health reinsurance arrangement account, where employees then pay the certain first dollar amounts and have to submit bills to get reimbursed. The long and short of it is, between the complexity that existed for the employee as we get into the self-insured, self-funded business, as well as the county, we came across a solution that I think accomplishes what we're looking for most importantly, and that's rate stabilization. If you recall, our rates are experience rated. Our increases are driven by Blue Cross, Blue Shield, or Priority, whoever we happen to be with, their profits. There's no doubt there. But we're also experience rated. So our increases are directly attributable to the health of our pool, if you may. And we know that we have, on an aggregate level, we don't have details because of HIPAA, but on an aggregate level, we know we have some high claim contracts, some high claim employees. And that's why you have health insurance, right? They're great employees. We want to try or all organizations want to try to drive those costs down if you can. But at the end of the day, we provide health insurance so that our employees, regardless of their circumstances, are able to take care of themselves and their families and come do our work. So in a sense, without saying that it's not important to try to have some impact on affecting costs associated with health insurance that you can affect, they are what they are. I mean, as well, we don't get to choose, if you may, some of the health issues that our employees have, and we want to be able to provide the health insurance. So we looked at this alternate called the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool, and what it does is brings that rate stabilization. They are a self-funded, self-insured pool. And instead of our rates now being based on an experience of 140, it's gonna be based on a pool of 14,000. It's similar to us participating in either the Michigan Association of Counties Workers' Compensation Fund or pool, or the one you're probably more familiar with is the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority liability pool that we participate in. So without getting too far into the details, and there was information attached to the packet that gave some highlights of who participates in the pool. They are all municipalities, primarily schools, you will notice. It started as an alternate to school insurance, but now has branched out into municipalities, townships, some counties, cities. So we're recommending that we participate with the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool and go that route. It will not change. I had an employee ask me, will this change our insurance? Not at the moment. This does not take effect until 2024. The West Michigan Health Insurance Pool participates with Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and Priority. So our Healthcare Cost Containment Committee this fall will go through the same process that they've always gone through, except instead of it being with Bruce Waldecker and directly with Blue Cross Blue Shield, it will be through Gallagher Benefits now and the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool to decide if we stay with Blue Cross, go to Priority, and then the series of plans that we have.
I see there's some rate information in there. Did you look at our current rates based on, are they close as far as rate stabilization goes? Are we gonna get a break next year? Where do you see it happen? How that fitting in?
Couple things on rate stabilization. The rates at the end took a look at if we had gone with the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool this year for 2023. So they had all our claims information, and they created rates for us. We would have seen a decrease in our rates. The one plan that's most closely aligned, one of the issues is the plans aren't exact. We, because of cost, went with Blue Care Network. We have a number of Blue Care Network plans. Those have a lesser benefit offering than Blue Cross, Blue Shield, the Blue Care or not the Blue Care Network, just the Blue Cross, Blue Shield plans. So there wasn't as much of a savings there, but the one Blue Cross Blue Shield plan that's compared, we would have seen if I remember it right, it was a 10% decrease in the cost associated with that.
That's significant.
It is. So no guarantees. What we're really interested in is that I said that we saw a 16% increase. The West Michigan Health Insurance Pool, over the last 5 years, their average increase has been 3% as a pool. So what will happen is we will receive whatever the pool increase is, and then they will look at our experience, our 140 lives, and based on how our personal experience is related to the overall pool, we could either see an additional increase or a decrease, but capped at 3.7%. And there's a band that works for every 2% above, you get 0.25% added. So there's a series of bands.
Okay.
So we were really interested in that cap, if you may, that exists on the health insurance.
Questions from commissioners? That was a pretty good explanation, so. Commissioner Doster.
I don't know if my memory serves me right, but I was thinking that when I was on the board 30 years ago that we did something similar. We were self-insured, but yet a member of a pool in order to enlarge the number of.
So your memory's close.
Okay.
But that's pretty good. We were self-insured, but not part of a pool.
Okay.
We were, and we continued with the self-funding oh, I don't know how, my memory's not that good, when we got out of it, but because rates were going up,
Okay.
we had to get out of it.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Tennyson?
Michael, you know how a lot of insurance, doctors won't take certain insurance. I mean, would Corewell Health take this and everybody surrounding the area?
Great question. And nobody will know, if you may, that it's the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool. You will have a Blue Cross Blue Shield health insurance card.
Okay.
Or else you will have a priority card, depending on what provider. We're not gonna have both. The Health Insurance Cost Containment Committee will need to make that recommendation in the fall to the Board of Commissioners after working with, to decide if we wanna stay with Blue Cross Blue Shield or switch to priority. But if you're familiar with MESA, what teachers have, I mean, I'm only familiar with it because my wife's a teacher. It's a Blue Cross Blue Shield card with then a little MESA symbol in the corner. This one may have West Michigan Health Insurance Pool symbol on the corner, but it's gonna look like a Blue Cross Blue Shield card.
Okay. Additional questions?
Which was real quick, which was attractive as well to us.
Yeah.
We thought, again, our goal is rate stabilization, and we think this will be the least obstructive, if you may, or disruptive maybe is the better word, way to accomplish that. We may come back at some point and look at if the experience of our employees got to a point where it was really good, and we were looking at saying, you know, we're not getting enough rate reduction on those bands. You might get to a point that it's worth looking at going self-funded or self-insured again, but we're just not there yet.
One more question. Okay, so you think anybody's gonna have to raise their deductible or anything to keep the same coverage that they have now?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't want to
Okay.
speculate at this point
Okay.
that, if I'm answering or understanding your question, is that, do you think that we will be able to maintain the same plans that we have?
Yeah.
Deductibles, all of co-pays, all of that, without the rates going up? Or more precisely, where I'm looking at is that we would be able to see reasonable increases. It's just gonna happen that everything goes up. But reasonable increases where employees can get to a point, or this Healthcare Cost Containment Committee, and say, all right, we're willing to accept the modest increase in cost to maintain the exact plan that we have. That would be our goal.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to do that in the past.
Right.
The only way we've been able to get to a acceptable increase is by changing that plan, which means we get something less. So I don't know the answer, and I don't want to make speculation, but that's where that's the goal of making the change, is to
Yeah.
try to start to dig into that, so that we're not year after year after year having to pay more for something less.
That's always been the biggest thing in my life, that every year it go up $200.
15%,
Next thing you know,
16%, yeah.
you're paying $1,500 and you still got an $8,000 deductible per person. So I mean, that's what my question was.
Yeah.
Commissioner Smelker?
So the cost containment on the insurance, that committee has voted, they'd like to go try this, right?
That's correct. They're recommending that,
They put a lot of time into this, I understand, so I think we should move ahead with it.
Yeah, I appreciate you digging into this and finding this, because insurance rates have just been going upward and skyrocketing, so a little stability would be an awesome thing, so let the team know we appreciate their work on this, so.
I will.
The chair, additional comments? The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of resolution dash to be named in the future, authorizing public entity membership in the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool for a minimum of 3-year period, beginning 1/1/2024.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Smelker, support by Tunison, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 23-something to authorizing public entity membership in the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool for a minimum of 3-year period beginning 1/1/24. Additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Michael. Great
Thank you.
work. Final item on our agenda today is a discussion on affirming our constitutional resolution, affirming our constitutional rights. If you remember, 2.5 months ago, maybe a little longer, 3 months ago, many of our friends from the GOP came before the board requesting that we become a Second Amendment sanctuary county. As many of you know, as we discussed at that time, we do not have any authority to direct the actions of the sheriff or the prosecuting and attorney. These are state-level commitments being made on gun laws and changes. And even if we were to declare ourselves a Second Amendment county, it basically is worthless from the standpoint of the paper it's written on. You don't have any authority to do anything about it. We had some discussions on that, and my feeling was this, is that when I went to the GOP meeting and they put the resolution out there from the Berry County GOP, I voted yes on it. I'm a gun owner, I'm an NRA member, I'm a hunter. I believe in all that stuff. And if the Berry County GOP wants to send that to the state of Michigan, declaring that on behalf of the Berry County GOP that they want to be a Second Amendment sanctuary county, I think that's fine. This board has a business function of the county. My opinion is we stay in our lane and we do what we've always done. We've never taken on these type of resolutions in the past. We have been doing some very good things moving forward. One of the things that I will tell you is, and we had a discussion on this in the past, is that as we do our work, there's an opportunity for us to highlight what we do in Berry County. You heard some of it today with the award we're receiving. I say we're receiving, but Planning and Zoning is receiving. But we just accepted another $500,000 grant to rehabilitate homes through Berry County. So we got another $223,000 in total grants awards. So we're just under $1.5 million in grant awards in the last 30 days in Berry County for blighted properties, for our land bank, for rural development. There's for our brownfield assessment grants that if we stay focused on the business of the county and we stay focused on the things that are working, we are able to do some great things with our collaboration, working all across county governments with all types of different people. And I like to stay in our lane, and that being a Second Amendment county doesn't do anything for us. I think our sheriff was here in a conversation with Dar earlier. He told me that he wasn't in favor of being a two-way county, that he was more in favor of support of the entire Constitution. Our prosecuting attorney, I know, has said that it's not enforceable. I mean, so when you look at it and see, if you've read the resolution, this is not a significant document as far as doing anything but affirming our belief in the Constitution of the United States and the state of Michigan and upholding those beliefs. So if you'd like, I can read it to you. As it states, resolution of the Berry County Board of Commissioners affirming the board's support of constitutional rights, whereas the Berry County Board of Commissioners has been requested to adopt a resolution to become a Second Amendment sanctuary county. And whereas input from our legal counsel, prosecuting attorney, and sheriff have duly noted the proposed resolution exceeds any authority that rests with the Board of Commission. especially to the extent that it directs the activities of the sheriff and/or the prosecuting attorney. And whereas we assumed the office, we all took the oath of office under which we swore to support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of Michigan with the oath of office as follows. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of County Commission according to the best of my ability. And whereas the sheriff and prosecuting attorney took the same oath of office and swore to support the same Constitution and faithfully discharge the duty of their respective offices, and whereas the Berry County Board of Commissioners wishes to reaffirm support for the Constitution of the United States and the state of Michigan in its entirety, including all of its amendments, which would include the Second Amendment. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Berry County Board of Commissioners does support and will continue to honor our pledge to support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of Michigan in all respects, including all of its amendments. Be it further resolved, the Berry County Board of Commissioners commends all county elected officials for honoring their pledge to support both the Constitution and amendments thereto. As we've stated in the past when we had this discussion a little earlier, our sheriff is very pro-Constitution. As gun laws continue to change and evolve and develop, we as a commission don't have authority over that. Our sheriff certainly would have some authority over some of that. As far as whether they enforce or don't enforce, I think we're in a pretty good place with our sheriff and how that works. Now,
Well, I'd like to hear from the sheriff if we could,
yeah,
Mr. Chair.
I'm not, yeah, sure. I'm not emotional about this. If it's something that the board feels important and they would like to vote on today and pass, fantastic. If you're not emotional about it and you want to table it, I mean, if I gave this assignment to every one of you, you would come back with a different resolution. So my key thing is we stay in our lane, we do the business of the county. As I attend the GOP meetings, I support their efforts, I support what they're doing. I think they have a definite function with what their role is. I think we have a definite function with what we do. So, I mean, that's my opinion. Sheriff Leaf, would you like to tone in, opine on any of that?
I'm just going to ask you to read that first sentence again on that.
The very first sentence, the resolution of the Berry County Board of Commissioners affirming the board supported constitutional rights, or the
Stop
first-
right there.
Okay.
All right, get the constitutional rights out of there. Constitution, you gotta understand, does not grant any rights. It does not. It gives job descriptions for your judicial, your executive, and basically your Senate, your House of Representatives, your judicial, and your executive. And so it doesn't grant any rights. Even the Bill of Rights doesn't grant any rights. It just affirms those rights and tells government you gotta stay away from those. So if you get rid of that, the constitutional right business out of there, I'd be much happier with that. So.
Keep in mind, it's our support.
Yes, I understand
of
that.
the constitutional rights.
Well, again, it's not constitutional rights, it's the Constitution. You have rights, they're natural, you're born with them.
So the word rights is the only word that bothers you in that?
Yeah, because the
Affirming
Constitution, it
board's
sounds
support
like.
of the Constitution.
Sounds like you're saying the Constitution is granting us rights.
Okay.
And it does not. You have natural rights, just like the free speech stuff that, they got some hate speech bill coming down right now, and I haven't got the breakdown of it yet. I haven't even got the breakdown of any of the new gun laws coming out. And I'm not sure what the delay is on that. I know the ink wasn't even dry on the signature, and they had already taken it out through the courts. But I'll keep you guys abreast on that, but if it's anything that violates anybody's due process, we're not interested in enforcing it. In fact, we'll do just the opposite and stand behind people's due process rights in the sheriff's office here. And I'm sure the prosecutor's office will do the same thing, because that's the right thing to do. Any questions for me on this stuff?
Yeah, don't you feel there's an assault on the Second Amendment coming through the state?
There's an assault on the whole Constitution lately.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, people don't understand. They say, oh, I want my Second Amendment rights, but the first part of that Second Amendment rights is, it says a well-regulated militia. And what they do is, when they read that, they skip these little words, like the word A. The word A basically tells you it's a militia that's already exists. It's existed. I mean, you go back to the Book of Numbers, And you'll see that in the Book of Numbers, they talk about the militia, and it was any able-bodied man 20 years on up. And then you go look at the 12 tribes of Israel, and you can see that the 12 tribes of Israel, the militia had 3 functions on it. And one was obviously the armed person protecting your kingdom, but you also have to protect your laws, and that's where the grand juries and the petite juries or petit juries came from. So there's a lot more to the history on it than what we're being educated on, and unfortunately, I've been able to hook up with a common law attorney out of Illinois, and we've been doing these classes for about almost 2 years now, out to the public, out in the internet world. So anyways, any questions for me on it? Yeah, I do support the Constitution, especially that Second Amendment. To me, that protects it all.
Okay, thank you.
But
Go ahead.
we would support any constitution, or the whole constitution, not one amendment more than the other. We support it all, right?
Correct, yes. And it's important.
It's just that they're attacking one of them now.
Yeah, when I made those stands a couple of years ago, it was important everybody understand that there's limitations on government, and that's what that Constitution does. It puts a chains on that government. And they're supposed to be working for us. And what I'm feeling more and more is, or seeing more and more is more corporatizing, more towards the corporations rather than people like you and I. And the state constitution, you look at the state constitution again, it gives job descriptions, but that first Article 1 is the Declaration of Rights. And a lot of them repeat the first 10 amendments. And something as simple as like no bill of attainder, ex post facto law. You know, what does that mean? And you'd have to go back and look that up as at the common law. But it states that phrase twice in our U.S. Constitution and one in Michigan's Constitution. That's how important that was. So that's what part of my studies have been, is going through that stuff and digging that stuff out, trying to educate the public more and more what the limitations of government are. So when you had a governor who is doing all these executive orders, well, executive orders are great for her employees, but she cannot order all of us to be locked up in our homes. You know, that was way out of bounds. And even our current president, when all this stuff started coming down, he says, well, my executive orders are only good for my employees. And I'm going, well, finally, somebody said it in the government. So when I go out and make these decisions, it isn't something I just go out and say, oh, I'm going to go mess with the centralized government. I usually have a good reason for it. And that's I want you guys to understand, is that these are job descriptions. And when they start stepping outside their job descriptions, you got to push them back into their position. I use a lot this comparison where if you're working at a union factory and you're a press operator and that light bulb goes out above your press, does that press operator change that bulb? And the answer to that is no. Either your electrician or maintenance will change that. And then I ask why. And they say, well, because it's not the press operator's job. There you have it, folks. That's your basics on your government. So.
Thank you.
So I went on a rant. Sorry about that.
No.
I can go on all day, please. Anything else?
Commissioner Smelker?
I'm fine if we just put constitution and take the right out of it.
Resolution of the Berry County Board of Commissioners affirming the board's support of the Constitution.
There you go.
We can make that change for next week. Commissioner
you.
Doster. Thank you, Dar.
All right.
I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I am not for a resolution for this board to make Berry County a sanctuary county for the Second Amendment, because I believe that that is a symbolic resolution. This board, in the 30 years that I've been associated with it, has had a policy of not adopting symbolic resolutions just to make a point and not anything that you can enforce or that you have jurisdiction over. I'm afraid that this resolution here that's in front of us is, I would also view as a symbolic resolution. It doesn't actually say anything. I mean, of course we support the Constitution and its amendments. I mean, do we also support the 220 years of case law then that has accumulated since, that defines what that means to our modern society? I mean, that's not, you get into parsing words and spending so much time on things just to make a point that I know that I believe that Kent County recently, this came before them, and they did a if you need to do some sort of resolution, I don't think that we need to, personally. They did a resolution in which they stated that the board does not act on symbolic resolutions. It was more complicated than that, but that would be where my view would be. I would not be for this particular resolution that's before us.
Just to also jump on that, when I was in the legislature, resolutions were endless. And I used to laugh because I noticed they were usually put forth by the most ineffective legislators that couldn't pass any legislation, so they'd have resolutions that no one could say no to. And then they became annual, so these multiple resolutions, like for instance, the resolution to declare October Chiropractic Awareness Month.
Was that your resolution?
Well, I liked it. I even, in my office, posted it on my wall there. But it happened every year, and then there was no end to resolutions. The victims of the Armenian massacre resolution, which that resolution actually offended Turkish people, but these resolutions just congest the whole system of the legislature because it's a Pandora's box, and they're not just one time. It becomes annual. So it's just something to think about. If we're going to start doing resolutions, that it could be unending, and is the tail wagging the dog, or is the dog wagging the tail? I don't think Chiropractic Awareness Month ever really made anyone more or less aware of chiropractic.
I'm aware, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Tennyson.
I'm all for this resolution, but the purpose, I think, of a resolution that a lot of other counties have adopted has been in support of the Second Amendment, and that's where I'm at with this here. It doesn't state it, but I am told in information with the Constitution. It's just the language. So.
Okay. Commissioner Campbell?
My first thoughts on this when I seen it was, I took an oath when I took this office. The oath said exactly what we're making a resolution to. And to my knowledge, I haven't changed how I feel about the Constitution. It just doesn't seem necessary that we're making a resolution to say that we're going to keep our promise that we've already made.
Okay. I appreciate the input. So the question is, what do you want to do? That, yeah, Commissioner Smelker.
Yeah, back during COVID, going to make a resolution, I think it was my idea, on wearing masks and stuff like that, and we did not do it because it wouldn't go anywhere. It was a resolution, I feel just like this one, that has no meaning. I support the Constitution 100%. I think about 4 of us on here swore our oath before we came into this office.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't say that we don't support the Constitution. Now, if there's a sentence in there that said Commissioner John Smelker strongly supports the Second Amendment, I would vote for it. But it don't say that, so I probably will vote no.
Okay. The feeling is, from listening to the comments, is that we don't have a motion on the floor for this, so we don't have to table it. But let's just forget about it for the time being. If it's thought up, if it's rethought or represented in a different form, we can consider it again. But we said that we would bring this up and discuss it. My feelings haven't changed since we had the original discussion on this 3 months ago per Larry. So I am willing to let this settle, and we can think about it another day. So, thank you. Public comment. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes.
I'd like to see all of you get out at the fair. This is some of the best weather we've ever had, and it was
Yes.
pretty light on population out there the last couple of days. So this is a great time to go out to the fair. I don't know why everybody waits till it's hot and humid. I don't get it. But there's, yeah, for the rides. But there's a lot of stuff going on there, and I don't know if they're, Bruce, do you know if they're doing the rides where they pick up like a commissioner and take them around the 4-H group barns? I didn't see that coming on.
We hadn't heard about it this year, so.
Okay.
No, I
But they have done it in the past.
Yeah.
John's in charge of that, right?
No.
No, that was 4-H. where
Oh,
they-
that's 4-H.
They give you tours of the barns and
Oh.
told you about the animals.
Okay.
So anyways, it's a good time out there. They've, again, a lot of stuff going on out there. The booths are all full inside the building. That's the first time I've seen that in a long time, so just get out there. It's fun. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Sheriff. Additional public comment? Going once, going twice. Commissioner comments, Commissioner Tunison.
Chair, thank you. It's been brought up a couple times around here from the public about Shelton Park, so I've done a lot of digging this week on this. Talked to Commissioner Getty a lot, talked to Michael Brown. I've come to this, there are 2 separate accounts out there. There's a 250 account, which is set up just strictly for Parks and Recs. There's a 2.8 account that is strictly for Shelton Park. Parks and Recs pays for a part-time employee out of that. Am I correct, Commissioner Getty? And they also pay for lawn care, mowing, and everything else at, what park is that?
McEwen Bridge Park
McEwen Bridge Park.
and the trail.
And the trail. The only thing in question here basically boils down to is Dan Patton's time that is spent between the park of Shelton Park and the park of Parks and Recs. And I'm confident that Mr. Brown and Chairman Jackson are going to come to conclusion on this for a dollar amount. And if Michael would like to maybe talk a little bit about that 250 account, I'd appreciate it.
You might have took him by surprise.
The amazing thing is he has it all at his
I don't-
fingertips.
That is the amazing,
I
that is the amazing
don't
thing.
think he's too much at surprise. He's on the ball.
Well, I think the, the question that was asked this morning and the discussion is that there are 2 separate funds. Charlton Park is what's called the 208 fund, and the millage money that is collected on behalf of Charlton Park and all of the event revenue that is collected by Charlton Park goes into that fund. All of the expenses associated with Charlton Park on an annual basis come out of that fund. And at the end of the year, if there is what's called surplus revenue, those funds remain, or those monies stay in that fund. They're not commingled, if you may. They remain with Charlton Park. Charlton Park's annual budget is about, if I remember right, $650,000. Yeah, about $650,000 annually. There is then a separate fund for Parks and Recreation, which is the 250 fund. And I think that was maybe that some folks weren't aware that there is a separate fund for Parks and Recreation. That budget annually is about $100,000. The funding for the Parks and Recreation budget, that 100,000, actually $100,833, comes from an appropriation from the general fund. So the general fund annually contributes $100,000, a little over that, to the Park and Recreation Fund, which then has a budget. I gotta switch to that sheet. To cover such things as a little over 28,000 for temporary salaries and FICA. There's about $10,000 for capital outlay. There's another $10,000 for building repairs. They operate to the mini grant program, if you're all familiar with that, $15,000. There's $28,000 allocated for contractual services. Then there are a number of smaller line items for printing, other supplies, postage, and whatnot. But the point being that there's almost $101,000 that is budgeted and includes expenditures for park and recreation, non-Charlton Park activities that come out of this separate and specific fund, and the funding for that comes from the general fund, not from Charlton Park or its millage. So I don't know if that's
And all
kind of
of-
the information. I'll stop for just a minute there and try to maybe answer a question that maybe created more questions than I answered.
No, only that all of Shelton Park's activities are paid for out of millage money.
Yep, Charlton Park's millage funds are not deposited into the Park and Recreation Fund. They go into the Charlton Park Fund. And the reason that we have funds is just that, so that Central Dispatch has its own fund, Transit has its own fund, Commission on Aging has its own fund. There are a number of funds, many of them, and those that I just talked about, have millages. And those millages have been approved and authorized to be collected for a specific purpose. Those funds can only be used for that purpose. And where it becomes complex is if they weren't in a separate fund at the end of the year, if there were excess millage revenues left over, they can't just go into the general fund or go for some other purpose. They remain there and then become what's called fund balance. So we also then have non-millage related funds that might be a state grant, where the state grant says this could, indigent defense, public defender is a prime example. Those funds can only be used. Now they require monies that come from the state of Michigan and the general fund to meet the full need of the program. But again, at the end of the year, if there are excess, they stay with that fund. The general fund's called the general fund because we collectively, those departments that are part of the general fund, sheriff, register of deeds, equalization, administration, we all are just that general. Our revenues are derived. Some of us, for example, administration, I don't generate any revenue. The Register of Deeds, for example, is a donor, if you may. Her department generates more revenue than what it spends. The Sheriff's Department is probably one that does not generate as much revenue as what it spends. So we have some departments that generate more than what they bring in, and others that don't generate anything. Collectively, though, it all has to be put together to make that operate. So I'll stop for just a minute, and I can go on for hours, and I'm sure you don't want to go on
Commissioner
for hours.
Coleman?
Mr. Chair, Michael, well, okay, thank you for the clarity on the two funds. Now, I've never said a word about any of this issue. I've just been a big ear listening to what people are saying. And so, so I want you to affirm or dispel the basic issue. So what I hear, the complaint I hear is that Mr. Patton is spending a significant amount of his time with the one board, although he's the director of Charlton Park. And is he being compensated by the other board for his time? That's really been the discussion I've heard.
Yeah, so, right now, Dan Patton is the only director that we have, and all of his compensation comes from Charlton Park. So I think it's been proposed for an amendment for 2023 and then for 2024 that there be an allocation of 75% of Dan's time be charged to Charlton Park and 25% be charged to Parks and Recreation. That would require an amendment. It would require one of two things: either the Park and Recreation Fund to spend, to fit that into their budget, meaning they would have to spend less somewhere so that they could meet that now ongoing demand, or the general fund, which is where the revenues that currently fund the Park and Recreation come from, contribute an additional amount. Right now, I'll be looking, as we look to the 2024 budget, at figuring out what that amount should be and increasing that appropriation as a recommendation. But that will be up to then this board to have that discussion of, is that the course? But that's been the suggestion at this point, is that Dan's time be allocated 75-25. Is it required? Is it a misuse of funds, if you may? I don't know that it is. I think that there's the legal aspect of it, and then there's just what the community feels. And if, as a board, you feel that we should allocate it that way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
I'd agree more with something like that. My concern is to keep within the spirit of the Charlton Park millage, that money goes to Charlton Park. Now, if Mr. Patton is spending a certain amount of time with the Berry County Parks and Recreation, I'd be more comfortable if we increased the allocation to the Board of Parks and Recreation, and then they allocated money to him. I think I would feel more comfortable with that.
So, yep, that's absolutely, it would just require an appropriation. And so that's kind of what I'm hearing. Ultimately, that will be up to the board, but that will be the solution that I'm looking to try to build into the budget as we work toward 2024, which will include then an amendment for 2023.
Off the top of your head, are you able to tell me between salary and health insurance and costs what Mr.
I'm not. It's not broken into detail in this report.
A general idea?
I'm gonna guess we're talking about, that the 25% would maybe be in the $25,000 or $30,000 range.
That includes MERS and health insurance and everything?
Yeah, I hate to guess that, because I'll,
Just wanted to ballpark it.
but that's,
Yeah.
I'm gonna think, let's say 30,000, give or take.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smelker.
I guess my question is Mr. Patton had a full-time job before we had Parks and Rec and them together. Now we're taking 25% of him away from his full-time job. We have a temporary person in Parks and Rec. Should we allocate that 25% to him and pay him more? I'm just asking if the board could look into something like that. Because I believe Mr. Patton had a full-time job before Parks and Rec were joined. That's all.
Yeah, that'll certainly be in the discussion on how that works out between Charlton Park and Parks and Rec, so how his current salary is allocated. There's, what, a free house out there as well, free room and board for Dan as well. There's a few other perks that go along with that job, so have to take all that into consideration, but did that answer your question, Commissioner Timmerson?
It did, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael, unless there's, Commissioner Campbell?
No comments other than get out to the fair, like the sheriff said. Lots of commissioners out there doing various community services. John's out there driving around in his cart, taking everybody around, and
Catherine's out there.
we have a lot of
That's
people in the
scary.
booths working, so come on out to the fair. It's a great time. Fair's back.
Commissioner Doster?
I have nothing.
Commissioner Carlton?
Nope.
Commissioner Getty?
Nothing.
Commissioner Smelker?
I just have a comment, all do, don't I? On our public comment there, they said on our planning commission, we have a lot of addresses that are, they're bunched together with Delton and Hastings. And I thought the same thing until I looked into it further, and they have the same Hastings address or Delton address, but they're different townships. They live in different townships. So really on there, when we put the board members on, especially the planning commission, and we put their addresses down, maybe we should put the township they're from, because there's quite a few different townships represented on that planning board.
True. True. And when those positions were open, I did actively promote that at my board meetings and recruit people for those positions as well. So I'm glad to see we're represented in Southern Berry County, so, you know. but-
Yeah. And when I go to my board meetings and we have openings, I mention it too, that we have, and then I go back and mention who we put on these committees. So I
Yeah.
feel like townships are represented.
Well, thank you, board, for a good discussion today. I have one other thing, and I don't want you to stampede. So everybody just take your time, form a single file line. I do have the coveted cow plot tickets for this year, for the Founder's Day in Delton. So they are a whopping $5 a piece. The winner last year took home almost $4,500. So this is sponsored by Delton Rotary, which is if you're familiar with Rotary, it's a great service organization for all the communities. So if you would like one, this is a limited time engagement. Otherwise, I'm buying them all. I'm buying the rest of them. So speak now or forever hold your peace.